The Saucony Endorphin Speed series has been a fan favorite for a number of years, being one of the first examples of a brand taking a race day caliber foam and sticking it into a training shoe that not only worked well as a companion shoe to their top tier racer, but also something that can handle just about any pace and any distance. Subtle tweaks over the years have kept the Speed as a fan favorite, but now that we are in the 5th version of the Speed, have Saucony done enough to keep up with the market that evolves at an alarming rate? This is my first impressions of the Saucony Endorphin Speed 5. Hi everybody and welcome to another video. My name is Matt and this is What Matters to Matt. And today we are taking a first look at the Saucony Endorphin Speed 5. And to get this disclosure out of the way right off the bat, this was a shoe that I purchased with my own money, so nobody is telling me what to say in this video. My thoughts and my opinions are definitely my own. And if after watching this video you think you want to give the Endorphin Speed 5 a try, I will put a link to it in the description down below. I'll also put a link to vmzfit.com. Now that's a website that me and my family have put together. There are a lot of affiliate links on that website. They mean nothing to your purchases, but they go a long ways to helping this little channel that we're trying to grow. Now, like a lot of people, I've got quite a bit of history with the Endorphin Speed series. The Endorphin Speed 1 was actually the shoe that I took to run my first marathon in. The Endorphin Speed 2 turned out to be the first shoe that I ran my first official half marathon in. The Endorphin Speed 3 was a shoe that I used for the bulk of my marathon training to run my second marathon in. And the Endorphin Speed 4 was a shoe that I used to run a shakeout run before the Saucony London 10K last year. Now the Endorphin Speed 5 has come into the picture and I've used that for 2 runs so far. One was a 25-kilometer long run with a park run sandwich in the middle of that run. I was running with somebody who is a little bit faster than me and they were doing some half marathon training. So it felt like 10K pace or 10K effort for me on the day. So I did get to pick up the pace. I've also done a 10-kilometer progression run just last week in this shoe. So I have had the chance to put a little bit of mileage. So I do have a good sense of what this shoe offers compared to the other speed shoes out there. And we're going to talk about that today. Before we actually get into that, I do want to go over exactly what Saucony says this shoe is for. Now, Saucony says that the Endorphin Speed 5 is built to go fast and feel smooth, whether you're pushing the pace on track night with friends or you're chasing a PR. The newly designed nylon plate and a responsive power on PB cushioning come together for snappy transitions and a fast ride. This is speed you can count on. All right, now that we've gotten what Saucony says this shoe is for, let's go over some of the specs before we get into my first thoughts on the Speed 5. Specs wise, we're looking at $175 US or $220 here in Canada. The weight of this shoe is 8.6 ounces or 244 grams in the US men's size 9. For me, that's 10.3 ounces or 292 grams in my US men's size 13. The drop of this shoe is 8 millimeters. Stack height is 36 millimeters in the heel and 28 millimeters in the forefoot. The upper is a lightweight engineered mesh. The midsole is power run PB foam plus a nylon plate plus speed roll geometry. The outsole in this is Saucony's XT900 rubber. Now when it comes to initial step-in feel, most Saucony shoes have fit me really well over the years. They just seem to work well with my foot, and the Saucony Endorphin Speed 5 is no different. It does fit true to size with just about a thumb's width here at the end of the shoe. You got lots of room up in the toe box. I believe it's actually a little bit wider up here than we saw in the Endorphin Speed 4. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments section down below, but I believe this feels a little bit wider. So if you are somebody who has a normal size foot or a little bit of a wider foot, you might be able to get away with this one. You will see that I have not completely unlaced it since I was out there on my last run, and so it's a little bit bunchy up here. Not that I'm complaining about that, hasn't caused me a problem, but I do get some bunching up there, and that is not unique to just this shoe. That happens to me in a lot of shoes. I tend to have just longer toes, and it means that I get some bunching when I really want to lock this down, which I did in my last couple of runs. But we are talking about a very comfortable upper that is pretty breathable. So Saucony's made some improvements there over the last couple of iterations. You've also got some padding back here in the heel. More than you would see in a race day shoe or some other up-tempo shoes, but not too much that it gets in the way, just stays really comfortable. There's also about the same amount of padding that we're going to find up here in the tongue, and we are looking at a partially gusseted tongue. Now the one thing I will say about that tongue is that it is a little bit short. So for me in the size 13, when I actually do the runner's knot or runner's loop, which I do in so many of my shoes, especially if it's going to be a shoe that I'm going to be running faster in, the laces come up really, really close. And if that tongue was just a little bit longer, I wouldn't worry about that quite so much. It hasn't been a problem on the first couple of runs, but I'm anticipating that eventually my laces are going to slip off that tongue once in a while. But because of that gusset and because of the way the shoe is built, I haven't had any issues of the tongue moving around at all. So that's just sort of a wait and see as we get closer to that 100-mile review. I also appreciate that we've got this little bit of an elf heel back here, and there's a lot of structure back here, and that just makes this shoe really, really comfortable to get on, and I get really, really good lockdown. Now, the one thing I will mention about this upper is when I first initially slipped it on, I was getting a little bit of pressure here on the medial side because it is fairly snug in the midfoot. It reminded me of what I get in some Hoka shoes when I first tried them on. That all translated into a good, snug lockdown fit between that tongue, between those laces, between back here in the elf heel, and how my heel actually fits back in this shoe. So I wasn't really having an issue with the lockdown, and really that pressure that I was feeling when I first stepped into the shoe completely disappeared when I got out in the run. When we move on down to the midsole of this, Saucony is still using that Power Run PB foam, and I started to think of whether that foam was going to start feeling a little bit outdated. And a bunch of other companies, practically everyone out there, has moved on to other foams. In their up-tempo shoes, in their super trainers, they've moved on to different foams, but Saucony has chosen to keep with the Power Run PB that they've had for a number of years, and it reminds me of those styrofoam coolers. I think I heard that first from Seth James Warren. I can't get that out of my head, but it is a PEBA-based material. And with that stack height of 36 millimeters in the heel and 28 millimeters in the forefoot that we've seen forever in the Endorphin Speed series, it feels very traditional, feels very nimble. And with that nylon plate, you've still got a little bit of snap, but it is pretty flexible. Now for me, all that translates into a shoe that I can use for up-tempo runs, but I can also use for daily miles. And I think that's been one of the unique things about the Endorphin Speed line that Saucony has done pretty well with over the years, is that people tend to use this for more than just up-tempo runs or race day. They're also using this for daily training miles, and I've run in practically every pace already in this shoe, and it works for me. That nylon plate is a winged design. I honestly don't know if that makes a difference. I'm a fairly neutral runner, and I've never had any stability issues with the Endorphin Speed line. This foam is on the firmish end, especially compared to some of the other foams that are currently on the market. So you do get some rebound. Again, it keeps it very up-tempo, and you are able to pick up the pace, but it translates into a foam that does feel fairly firm. And I think some people that are running in daily trainers and super trainers and different shoes, recovery shoes that just have all sorts of squish these days, might actually almost start to feel like this is a little bit harsh. It surprised me when I got my first run of this shoe, 25 kilometers out of the box, of exactly how it felt, and I started thinking about some of the other shoes that I've been running in lately. Now, taking a quick look at the outsole, I appreciate what they've done here. I do think the traction is better in this than we've seen in previous speed iterations. I'm not really sure if that's just the pattern of it, but it felt better out there on the run. I ran mostly on concrete and pavement for those first couple of runs, but I did get off-road a little bit on some crushed rock trail. Haven't run in the wet yet, so that's going to come in a longer review, but so far traction has been pretty good. XT900 rubber has always held up really well for me, so no real issues there. And I know some people talk about just the amount of exposed foam here. Now, whether it's Saucony's Power Run PB or Power Run Plus foam, I've always found that it's held up really well. No matter what surface I run on this shoe, it's not like a ZoomX that gets chunked up really easy. It is fairly resilient, so I don't have a whole lot of concern about durability. Of course, I can't say too much at this point because it's so early on in this shoe, but I don't think I've got any problems. So I really do like the outsole, and you've actually got a little bit of a window here to that nylon plate. All right, so at the end of the day, what are my first impressions of the Saucony Endorphin Speed 5? I think Saucony is playing it safe with this one. They've made small changes over the different iterations. They keep swinging back and forth between being a little bit more up-tempo to being a little bit more daily trainerish, trying to evolve as different people, different consumers ask for different things out of the shoe. But I'm wondering if they're starting to play a little bit safe in this. And I'm going to be really curious If they continue to keep the stack height relatively the same, if they continue to use a similar foam in the shoe over the years, I know Nike has used Zoom X for a very long time, but this is starting to feel maybe like it's close to being outdated. I said that earlier in the video, and I'm actually wondering whether that's actually going to be the case. I will say, when it comes to this shoe versus other Endorphin Speed lines that I've run in the past, the Saucony Endorphin Speed 2 that I tried on earlier today, went for a little bit of a jog in, was the GOAT for me when it came to an up-tempo trainer. And the Endorphin Speed 5 might actually tip it off its tier. We're gonna have to do a couple more runs in it just to see. I'll probably do a little bit of a comparison of one shoe on each foot. But right now, when it comes to the Endorphin Speed line, this is a really solid shoe for me. Able to pick up the pace, not get lost in that foam, just your classic up-tempo shoe, and I appreciate that. So guys, I think that's it. That's going to be my first impressions of the Saucony Endorphin Speed 5. No real surprises in this shoe over previous Speed iterations. If you like this video again and you are not subscribed, please consider subscribing to my channel. If you are a long-term subscriber of the channel from the bottom of my midsole, thank you so much. My name is Matt. This has been my first impressions of the Saucony Endorphin Speed 5, and what matters to me most is my family. I'll see you guys in the next video.
Step 1, wake up early, gonna rise with the sun. Step 2, get some food in you. Step 3, think real hard about what you wanna be. Step 4, everybody just do your thing.
Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be